He joins me on the program now. Nick, kia ora, nice to see you.
Good to be with you, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
In particular, concerns about influence on our politicians, influence on some of the policy decisions that are made, and relationship back to China, to the Chinese Communist Party. Some people would say, aren't China our allies? They're our best trading partner. They're our friends now. Nothing to see here, nothing to be worried about, perhaps.
Well, yeah, I mean, technically, they're definitely not our allies, but they are our biggest trading partner.
Yeah.
And sometimes people confuse the two. And there is a really serious question around whether we have conflated trade with security, with friendship. A lot of people will say, well, why do we need to, be anything otherwise? Why would we need to be suspicious or hostile towards China? And I'm not suggesting we need to be hostile, but we do need to be a little more aware. We need to be more suspicious when it comes to some of the activities that we are now seeing happening very openly in public in New Zealand. And I think the best case has happened in the last couple of days in recent times. The ambassador from China, who's based here in Wellington, has written letters to MPs from the New Zealand Parliament who attended a national day of celebration that the Taiwanese were putting on in Wellington at their office.
Yep.
Now, of course, Taiwan doesn't have an embassy because they are not recognized by virtually, anyone in the world now.
Anyone that wants to trade with China, basically, yeah.
That's right, because of China's, one China policy, which is that they won't do business with you if you don't at least acknowledge that they claim sovereignty over Taiwan. So anyway, they had this National Day of Celebration at the Taiwan office in Wellington. MPs from New Zealand's Parliament went along. It seems very clear now that someone has reported back to the Chinese embassy and told the ambassador who attended. This isn't the first time that the Taiwanese have put on such a celebration here in Wellington.
Yep.
They've done it for many, many years, in fact, going back over 20 years. And we've always recognized that the Taiwanese are an independent democracy, off the coast of China, that they are effectively, living life independently as a democracy. So, we're at a point where the Chinese now are putting pressure politically and openly and saying to our MPs, if you even associate or meet with people who represent Taiwan, then we're going to tell you that you are in our bad books.
Wow.
And we are not going to tolerate this. Well, what that means in terms of practical consequences, it's not clear yet. But it's the rhetoric is getting hotter. It's getting much more sort of direct and confrontational, you could argue.
In terms of diplomacy, having anybody from a foreign embassy making do's and don'ts list for our elected MPs about what type of parties they could go to, who should be on their friends list, who should be in their Facebook friends list. That sounds ridiculous, but essentially this is what's happening.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a question of our own national sovereignty. We can't have our own MPs in our own capital attending an event put on by an independent democracy, which, yes, isn't recognized by much of the world only because of China's bullying tactics. And so, we play this game. It's largely a game of words, about exactly what is Taiwan and what claim does China have over it. Effectively, though, in a real sense, Taiwan is its own country, and they're trying to live their lives much like we live our lives here under a democracy.
Yep.
But we can't support that. We're being told by the Chinese ambassador that, that it's wrong for us to even attend an event. So we're beginning to grow very concerned about where this is heading. This is just an example that's popped up this week.
Yeah.
But I've just come back from a couple of months overseas where I met with people in Europe, the UK, and US who are working with organizations that are trying to raise awareness around this problem, that China is flexing its muscle increasingly and has become much more vocal, much more assertive, and often quite aggressive in the way it's pursuing its own sort of geopolitical aims.
As you say, this is only the most recent example. A Chinese influence within, pretty much all of the political parties in New Zealand through donations of Chinese nationals with direct links back to the Chinese Communist Party, or even some candidates for various political parties having links to the Chinese Communist Party. There's many different ways in which our political system is connected directly or indirectly with what's happening in mainland China.
Yeah, and there are also just basic human rights abuses that are happening on such a large scale in China that continue to kind of be a second thought for countries like New Zealand. More than 1 million people are believed to have been in re-education camps, placed in re-education camps in Western China, because they belong to the wrong ethnic minority. The brainwashing, the indoctrination that goes on because the state is trying to enforce its own ideology. It's a one-party state. It's not a democracy. Doesn't matter what they want to call it. That's what it is. We've got issues around Taiwan, like I mentioned. Still, there's the issue over Tibet. There are people in Hong Kong right now, or people who've had to flee Hong Kong, who were leading the pro-democracy movement and are living in the UK, 19 in particular, who've got arrest warrants that the government in Beijing have put out. And they've not only put out these arrest warrants for these 19 pro-democracy leaders, but they've gone to the UK and they publicly advertised for help in detaining and basically repatriating forcibly these 19 pro-democracy activists to China.
Yeah.
The Foreign Secretary of the UK said, well, that's not on. We can't have that happening here on our own soil. Nothing's happened, though, as a consequence.
Wow.
So, what are we doing really in the West? What are we doing as liberal democracies? I don't know if we really believe this stuff, if we're not going to stand up for people on our own soil who have come, seeking refuge, who want to be able to live in a democracy and participate like the rest of us, but are being denied that by their former governments that are authoritarian.
From a faith perspective, I mean, this is particularly the underground church in China, recent or ongoing persecutions there. And again, silence from our government in that regard. Hey, continuing to pray for these people, but also be good to be able to take some action in that regard. It is complicated in that there are significant business interests in New Zealand with roots in China, that there are a growing number of people who are part of New Zealand society who have connections with the Chinese Communist Party. And, I don't want to throw up the immigration card and say, we shouldn't have people from China as a part of our society. I mean, I think our country is richer because of it, not just from a financial point of view. But it does get complicated as to where the sphere of influence is. Honestly,
let me give you two quick sort of responses to that, because I hear this frequently now. First of all, trade. We have to trade with lots of countries. Some of them are unsavory in certain respects. There will be humanitarian issues with many different countries that we engage with.
Yeah.
We have to treat each of those case by case. And when we become aware of stuff, we do have to ask serious questions. Should we really be engaging in trade with some of these nations? That is true for China as well, but I don't think that means that we can't ever trade with China.
Yeah.
I think that, yes, we have substantial investments, but just because we have money invested there and we have this massive trade relationship, does that mean that needs to be our future? We can begin to pivot away, and we are actually beginning to pivot away because many companies realize that putting all your eggs in one basket is a lesson we learnt the hard way many decades ago. So we need to diversify. The second point would simply be that this has nothing to do with whether you're ethnically Chinese or not. This has to do, in fact, with people who are ethnically Chinese being persecuted by an authoritarian regime that also happens to be led by people who are ethnically Chinese. We've got people from all over, the world, from the Chinese diaspora, who are crying out for help. Even in China right now, you've got a case of a pastor of the largest underground church, people believe, in existence right now in China, who has been arrested and is probably very little chance that he's going to be released. Why? Because he simply refuses to bow to the CCP when it comes to what he believes and what he teaches. So, Christians should be concerned about this, as well as every other Kiwi, I think, who cares about democracy.
Having a friendly relationship with China, both diplomatically and also economically in terms of trade, that is possible. But if we're really friends, we should be able to have frank conversations. If we're really friends,
Absolutely.
we shouldn't be telling each other which parties we're allowed to go to. We should be able to have frank conversations about our concerns in the human rights space without that being a deal breaker in terms of our relationship, because if we can't have those conversations, it's not a real friendship.
No, absolutely right. And, of course, China always insists that its sovereignty should be respected. I mean, its one China policy is literally that. And yet we then have them coming, to our own MPs and lecturing them about who we can meet with on our own soil and our own capital. Taiwan, a democratic nation, which is facing an existential threat across a very short distance of sea, from China. So, yeah, we're heading into very difficult territory here.
Yeah.
And let's be frank, a lot of politicians, a lot of MPs know that this is a problem. Many of them are actually privy to information that the public's not getting. I'll just give you one quick example. In Australia, the spy chief over there, the head of ASIO, Mike Burgess, has just come out publicly and said there are 3 countries that have the willingness and the capability to carry out assassinations of people that disagree with them. And those countries, he's indicated, are Iran, Russia, and China.
Wow.
And this is happening, and it's happening in other countries. So we shouldn't think that New Zealand is immune to it. In fact, we've been told by a number of international experts on this issue that New Zealand is kind of the soft underbelly. We're a soft target.
In terms of a solution to this, and not wanting to get too conspiracy theory on this, and as you say, making sure that we're talking about the actual issue and it's not a Chinese ethnicity issue, but being able to shine a light, to be able to have some transparency into the relationships that people have, particularly relationships of political influence. What do you propose here, Nick? What could be a solution, or at least move us in the right direction?
So we think this foreign influence register is a really good start. Of course, it needs some political will behind it. And so we're looking to try and kind of coalesce that and see what we can get MPs to commit to. It needs to be there because we need transparency. We also just need to reassert or restate what our values are in this regard. If we have people coming here seeking refuge, we've got people of Chinese, ethnicity who can't express themselves democratically here, despite all our laws giving them those rights. Yeah. Then we shouldn't assume that it's not going to influence or impact the rest of our society beyond the Chinese community here. And I really do, want to stress that this is not just happening here. It's happening in many countries, and it's very well documented. Yeah. The UK, Australia, Canada, the US, and so on. The list goes on. It is happening here, and we like to think we're on the edge of everything, but quite frankly, we're not. We are quite affected by this, and people just haven't really been paying enough attention.
Nick, thank you so much for shining a light on this important issue. Yes, it is a complicated one, but that doesn't mean that we do nothing in this regard. Appreciate the work that you do at Pillar NZ. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Andrew.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.